It's a formula to find it. Okay. She hasn't done this. I did the lesson yesterday. It is the axis of symmetry formula. Well, it's easier to find the formula.
Under quadratics and graphing, children. Remember the formula, the whatever, let's do this one. Y squared. Well, it's looking for an actual problem. Yeah. Remember the formula for that is either y or f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c. It's probably little a, is it? It's supposed to be little a. Yeah. Yeah, let's just write over top of that. Little a, little b, little c. Okay. Let's say I've got this quadratic function of x equals x squared. We should make one that works. Does this one work? Yeah, it does. Plus 6x plus 5. If you are going to graph, and that's what we're kind of looking at here, two graph. Here would be kind of the short yet exciting steps of that. Okay, the first thing you have to understand is all quadratics, when you graph them, they're going to be parabolas. Yes? Yes.
Where?
And your parabola is either going to open up like this, or it's going to open up like this. Okay? And what tells you that is
Negative x squared. Positive x squared.
right, whether this is negative or positive. If it is positive, you get this shape. Just go in knowing that. This is positive. Upside down is negatory. Okay. And they're going to be symmetrical, which means when you graph it, one side is a mirror image of the other side. God bless you. In order to find that mirror image place, we have what is called, step number 1, we need to find what we call the axis of symmetry. And there is, as Evelyn will tell you, probably has numerous times already.
Negative b over 2.
There's a formula for that, which is negative b over 2a. The axis equals that. That gives you the point on the y-axis that you're going to draw the axis. So I would suppose if you want to do well at this, always, always, always take your time. And I would define what my A, B, and C are. A equals B equals C equals. A is the number in front of the x squared, which happens to be a 1. B is the number in front of the x, which happens to be the 6. And C is that number all by itself up there, which happens to be 5. Everybody good with that? Have I really confused you yet, Tyler? Not yet. So, we're going to plug in the numbers here, see what our axis of symmetry is. Negative b over 2 times a. Negative b is negative 6. 2 times a is 2. Oh, great. Does it not equal a nice even number? Why did they pick this one? Anyways, your axis of symmetry happens to be negative 6 over 4. I really didn't want to pick that one.
But A is, no, but
No,
A is 1.
That's why it was. A is 1. I quit. So good. My axis of symmetry is negative 3. Thank goodness that was wrong. Sometimes it's good to be wrong. It's hip to be squared. So what does that mean, you ask? That means here, where x is negative 3, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, you will draw a dashed line. Because your parabola is going to wrap around that line. The difference between a parabola and an inverted catenary curve? Who knows? What's next, you ask?
What's next?
Once you find your axis of symmetry, step number 2 is you need to find your vertex, which is the point at which the parabola comes to. In this case, we are going to have what we call a minimum, because it goes down. It goes forever up. It doesn't have a maximum because it goes forever up, but it does have a minimum. So in this one, we're going to find a min. In this one, we find a max. And how do you do that? To find the vertex, you put your axis of symmetry in the equation and solve. It's a little old school. Really what you're doing is if you think about making a table of x and y values, you are taking this -3, putting it in for x into this equation, and see what you come up with for your y, which is what's going to be left. Oh, now who did this? Now this one is going to be goofy. Because, oh, no, it won't, because it's -3. See? I'm just as rusty as can be. So here, I'll do it slowly. -3 squared plus 6 times -3 plus 5. Stop me if you didn't catch that. I just put my x into this place and this place and rewrote it there. -3 times -3 is +9. -6 times -3 is -18 plus 5. Anybody? 9 minus 18 plus 5 is? Somebody said it, I just didn't hear it, -4. Which means here at -3, 1, 2, 3, 4. That is your minimum. That is your vertex. Your parabola is going to do this and come to a point down there. Now, do I know that's what it looks like? Not yet, because I still have to do a couple more things. And you're not going to have an exactly perfect parabola, but you're going to have a decent sketch of one by the time we're all done. Now, here's one good thing you can do. Step number 3. If possible, you can actually find the y-intercept. Anybody know how I can find the y-intercept? The y-intercept is what happens when you put 0 in for x. Because that's the x-axis where at x is 0 right here. So whatever value you get for y, it's going to be where it crosses the y-axis. And this is nice because when you put 0 in for that, it goes away, that goes away. This number at the end here, we should probably circle that. This number is nice because the letter C is the y-intercept. So here my y-intercept is?
5.
Yeah, very good. Look at you're so smart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Step number 4 with that is this. Since this thing is symmetrical, children, since this is symmetrical, if you find a point on one side of the axis of symmetry, you automatically know a second point because it's going to be the same distance away. See, this was this distance away here. You go that same distance over here away, and there's going to be another point because this, that wasn't very close with it. Because this is an axis of symmetry. You have that point there as well. And then step number 4, you really should find one point in between all of that. So really, you have to do some difficult work here. You get to pick any point that you want to there. Pick a point and solve for it. You really don't have any easy way to do anything else. So I would probably pick, anybody? I had 0, -5. Something between -3 and 0. What if we pick just the number 1? Wouldn't that be a good one? No, let's pick -1, sorry. -1. If I put -1 into my equation, what do I get? -1 squared plus 6 times -1 plus 5. -1 squared is +1 minus 6. Oh my gosh, look what happens. Plus 5, what do I get? -1, 0. -1, 0. -1, 0. And guess what? If I know that point, then I also know this point right here. And then once you get that, children of, you can can just kind of pencil in your sketch for this parabola. Parabolas all kind of do this. This is kind of a factor in the scheme sort of thing. And there is Mr. Parabola. And if you all had a French curve, you could draw a perfect one, but nobody has one. So
It's a French curve.
it's a little thing that has all sorts of angles in it. Can you scroll down?
Yeah, could you scroll back?
Nope.
Who knows?
Before I scroll down, though, let me tell you this one other thing you need to know. These 2 points right here, let's go a color we have not used in a while, orange. This point and this point are what we call the zeros of the graph. They are where y equals 0. And technically, they are the answers to a parabolic problem. But we'll talk about that more a little bit later. When you solve, Evelyn, this will pique your little interest there. When you solve using the quadratic equation, you get these two numbers. You would get -1 and whatever that is, -5 would be the answers to that. Which, ironically enough, just to throw that at you again, take a look at this. I had x squared plus 5x plus 6. Was it 6? Yes.
Yeah.
Equals, let's just put y.
Plus 6x plus 5.
Well, somebody told me wrong.
Well, that would,
I blame Paul.
yeah,
Good blame policy.
Just to tie most of this together, remember the zeros? What were the zeros? The zeros on this were
-1 and
-1 and -5, right?
yeah.
I said those were the answers
it's parabolic.
to the parabolic thing. If you put this into that quadratic equation, you would get those two numbers. Think about this. If I factored this into two binomials, what would my
X plus 5 and x plus 1.
x plus 5, x plus 1, which is,
The opposites of zeros.
why is it opposite?
I don't know.
Because it wants to be.
No, listen to this. You want to know, you want to find out when y is 0. So if this equation was 0, the whole thing becomes 0. And if this equation was 0, the whole thing would, or this little x plus 1 was 0, you get. So it's always the opposite of what this is, -1, -5. Because -5 plus 5 gives you 0. 0 times anything gives you 0, which is what you want for y. X minus 1, that doesn't make any difference to anybody, but that's just the way it is. Wade, it would be nice if you would show up for class once in a while.
Wade is not going to be
You
watching
need to
this.
send this to
Yeah, Wade will not be watching this.
Nah, it's
It's too lazy.
He doesn't watch it.
Wait, don't listen. Do not badmouth a guy that's not here.
But that's why he's not.
But why? He's not here.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me give you one to try. I need a nice equation here, people. I hate it when they don't give me something easy. I'll just make one up. Give me I need a pencil just to write something down here. Ready? Let's do it. Let's find the graph of x squared plus x minus 6. X squared plus x minus 6. X squared. Give me the graph of that, find the axis of symmetry, and tell me what the zeros are. Technically, if you were listening to anything I said, you could actually tell me what the zeros are right now. But you don't.
-1 and the opposites. 6
Oh, wait.
and -1.
I think you're wrong.
We tried.
You don't get sixes and ones when you factor that. You have to factor the two binomials. What's the numbers you get when you factor in two binomials? Those are your zeros. You're just looking at that and going, oh, the number in front of x is 1.
It's 2 and -3, or it's 3 and -2.
That's your, what's your problem? Just grab that. See what you get.
Wait a minute.
And don't let me forget, before you get out of this place, we will take a calculator out so I can say you did it. And you'll use the calculator probably to graph the quadratic equation. In addition, you find what? Is there a fraction? There could be a fraction.
Wait.
I can tell you the y-intercept is not a fraction.
Well, the axis
That doesn't matter. You can make it. The axis of symmetry being a fraction should not bother you in the least. It's really not that bad of a deal. Except you have to use it to find the minimum and the max, I guess. How did that happen? It's because I came up with a problem. Which wasn't a good thing. Axis. Wow, that was ugly. These days, what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 6. In. This is just terrible. Well, 1/4 plus 1/2, that's pretty simple. 3/4 minus 6, negative 5/4. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5, and 4. Wait, is that right?
How do you know what crosses on y negative
Well,
1?
this was negative 1/2. That's right. I did that wrong. It's 1/4 minus 1/2, which is 2/4. It's a negative 1/2 and a positive 1/4. Gives you negative 1/4. Negative 6 1/4, sorry. I knew that was somewhat wrong. My bad. Anybody, how did I know that negative 5 1/4 could not possibly be my minimum? Somebody tell me why. Come on, bonus points if somebody can tell me why.
What?
How did I know that negative 5 1/4 could not be the minimum?
Because negative 6 is more.
Because negative 6 is right here on the y-axis, and my parabola has to go this way because it's a positive, and if I had negative 5, my parabola would have to open down, and it's not, so I couldn't do that. So boom, boom, boom. Look at this. I've already got all these points. What are you guys doing? Slightly confused.
I am very confused.
Why?
Because I don't understand.
Which part?
How do you find those 2 points?
Well, I found this one by the axis of. Wait, was it?
Yeah, I got that
It was
one.
negative one, yeah.
I got that.
I just used the zeros. I didn't use those 2 points.
What zeros?
You use the y-intercept.
Yeah,
Where's the y-intercept?
Negative 6.
the
Right.
y-intercept's -6.
Right. So that goes here. So I got. Did you get the axis of symmetry to be there?
Wait, what'd you
Yeah.
Oh,
So then you just have to put this into the equation to figure out where the point is on the axis of symmetry, which ended up being negative 6 1/4.
I got that, but how do you get the 2 points right next to that?
Well, one of them was the y-intercept that you told me you got, negative 6.
and
That's not what I did!
Isn't it just a mirror to that?
Yes, it's a image.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing we gotta do is find one more point that's not here. So I would pick maybe positive 1, because that would be really easy. If I take positive 1 and put it in here, I should have never made up my own problem. 1 plus 1 minus 6 is a negative 4. So here at negative 4, same distance away from that, which is what? 1.5. Now, for those of you, I asked you what the zeros would be
The zeros are positive 2, negative 3.
if you factor this. You get x what? Plus 3 times x minus 2. It's the opposite of those numbers. So it crosses, it's minus 3 and a positive 2. So here at positive 2 you have a point, and at negative 3 you have a point. Negative 2, 2. And there, ladies and gentlemen, is a parabola of epic proportions. Epic. If you put this in the quadratic equation, this is the two answers. Yeah. Yikes is all I can say to that. What I really want is a couple. They don't give me any nice parabolas. I don't think we're really supposed to graph it. That's not nice. Let me give you one last one. That will be your assignment. But I'm going to find a good one. I need a pencil. This time I'll make something that works out nicely. If I can think of it. Wait, it's negative b over 2a, right? So I just need to have a b that can be divisible by 2, Carter Westfall. A b divisible by 2. Let's go with...
Yeah, your music calculator.
Let's see if this works out.
Figure it out eventually.
Don't do it. Just click buttons.
Yeah, we have to figure out how to use the calculators.
Oh, you people. The whole world revolves around. Here we go. Graph me this one. That is your whole assignment. And tell me, I will graph this.
Is this actually our assignment?
This is your assignment. X squared plus 2x minus 8. And I need to know the x. I need to know the axis of symmetry. I need to know the minimum. I need to know the zeros. And I need to know the graph. It's a 4-point problem. Axis of symmetry, minimum, zeros, graph.